Let's get loud.
It's showtime, showtime, showtime. Let's go, Seattle fans. Where you at? How devoted are you? Time to get loud with your host, Native Seahawk.
Let's go! All right, welcome to this edition of The Loud and the Devoted. My name is Aaron Thomas, otherwise known as Native Seahawk. And yeah, here we go, guys. We're less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. And I don't know about you, but I've been trying to psych myself up for this draft. I've been watching football movies. I watched Draft Day with Kevin Costner. And to this day, what Kevin Costner did in that movie where he was the Cleveland Browns general manager and he had the number 7 pick overall. He then traded 3 number 1 picks to go from, well, actually 2 additional number 1 picks because they switched from number 1 down to number 7, from number 7 up to number 1 with the Seahawks. And he still ends up getting the number 1 pick overall. He ends up getting his seventh overall pick back from the Seahawks. So he had 2 top 10 picks in the draft. And I'm just going, could that really happen? Could a team like the Seahawks or any team like the Bears or somebody turn 1 top 10 pick into 2 top 10 picks and replenish all their other picks that they had given away, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, again, it's only in Hollywood that I would think that could happen. It's probably like a 1 in 10 billion chance that could happen. But, again, I'm doing everything I can to kind of get myself psyched up into watching this year's draft. And that was really an NFL puff piece, wasn't it? Draft day, because when they were talking about who had who the Browns were calling, they called Jacksonville Jaguars for the number 6 overall pick. It showed Jacksonville, the city, and it showed the stadium and home of the Jaguars. It's like, come on. This was really just an NFL puff piece to try to get more viewers to watch the NFL. It's a really smart move to do to have your brand there in the movie industry and try to get different audiences to watch the NFL. So okay, I don't give them that much of a ding for that. It's just those of us that are in the know kind of go, okay, this is just a puff piece. But that movie came out in 2014, so 10 years ago now, when Kevin Costner pulled off the trade of 2 centuries, not just 1. And so, yes, I'm getting psyched up. All these people are trying to put out all these different things about what the teams are going to do, who they're going to draft. And it's just really ridiculous how a lot of us. I mean, some of you watching this have probably done 10 or 20 or 30 mock drafts. You find your favorite app and you literally just hit the speed button and he goes all the way through to your pick. And then you choose the guys you want. And then at the very end, it grades your draft. And I think I might have flirted around with maybe 2 drafts for the Seahawks so far. But you know what? We're so early. It is so early in the process, even though we're less than 2 weeks away. As was reported several times the last couple of days, even general managers don't know fully who they're going to pick, even in the top 5 of this year's NFL draft. Nonetheless, in second round, third, fourth, fifth, who they're going to trade back with, who they're going to try to trade up for. They're all putting their boards together, yeah, but nobody really knows where Brock Bowers is going to go. Is he really going to go to the Jets at number 10? Is he going to go to the Seahawks at number 16? Nobody knows, and the guys, it's just kind of crazy how none of us knows where the future makeup of the Seahawks team is yet. And so that just leaves us a lot to talk about because we don't know who's going to be on this team. A little bit later on, we're going to get into who is on the roster now. There's been some changes even from 5 days ago when I put out my last podcast. Who's on this team? It's kind of evolving in front of our eyes. But since the last podcast, I had mentioned that it was the very first day really of the season for the Seahawks, as on April 8th, they began their off season training activities, the OTAs began, and the headlines that came out, I said there was going to be several press conferences where current players of the team are going to come out and talk about the new regime. How did it go with Mike McDonald? How did it go? I always want to say Mike McDaniel, but it's like Coach Mike Mack. How did it go with him as being the head coach of your Seattle Seahawks? And of course, everybody kept saying it's not Pete Carroll. It was really interesting how that's a new regime. But the headline from Nuwasu was saying that they have the right coaches now for this team, which I don't know if he meant to say it like that. Like, okay, Coach Carroll was here, and I'm not trying to diss Coach Carroll. I think he did kind of allude to that in his words in his interview, but the headline said no, we've got the best coach now for this team, and it really insinuates that it wasn't Pete Carroll. And I told us, in some of my earlier podcasts, I said that we did not. Coach Carroll did the best he could, but he just didn't have that final detailed. He wasn't. You don't have to always be everywhere as head coach. I get that, but you have to have your offensive and your defensive coordinators really wrap their arms around the players and watch them and mentor them and communicate with them and really hold them accountable. And I think there was that last point that the three coaches, the head coach and the two coordinators, were not doing very well. We wish them all the best of luck. They're on different teams now. Coach Carroll is probably somewhere in Hawaii, enjoying his grandkids, etc. Yet, what is really missing from one of the youngest teams in the NFL, I believe the average age in Seattle, and it's going to vary because we're going to get we've got some older guys coming onto the team now, was about 25 years old. And so now you look at it and say, how do you as a coach come in brand spanking new from University of Washington, if you're Grubb, from another team in the NFL with the Cowboys, and as the defensive coordinator comes in, how do you hold these guys accountable? And these guys are making millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars for their first couple of years, but how do you really, in this day and age, when the guys are young, they're 25 on average, they're used to watching TikTok videos all day, they're on their cell phones, how do you hold them accountable? And I think that's really what we're trying to say here, and what Nuwasu was trying to say is now he feels that he's got at least the head coach, the defense and offensive coordinators are going to come in and they really know how to communicate and manage accountability with the young players. So that's exciting to hear again from one of the Seahawks sort of elder statesmen on the team, Nuwasu, who's in his late 20s, coming off that really bad injury. We really missed him in the run game, setting the edge on that left side of the defensive line. And so it was really good to see him come out and be able to speak freely about that, about the coaches and how they're going to come in and really, really just try to hold the players accountable. No more cigars after not getting in the playoffs. Come on. All the kind of different ways that DK was sort of popping off in the game and on the sidelines. Those things need to be nipped in the bud. No more Jamal Adams. That fiasco's gone. That whole circus is gone, which is good. So the moves have been made to sort of shape the team. Now we got to see how the coaching staff is going to manage the team. The other sort of headline that came out of the OTAs this week was that Tyler Lockett reworked his contract, and he pushed the team was able to push $4 million into incentives. So basically, they're telling him you're not going to be able to just get the money. That $4 million, you're going to have to earn it, and it's usually two different buckets that goes into either a likely to be earned or not likely to be earned bucket. And if he hits all the likely to be earned incentives, then that part of the $4 million does go and hits the cap for 2024. But if they reworked it to make it so it's not likely to be earned, let's say he's never had 15 touchdowns in a season, and they move the $4 million into that sort of incentive, then that would mean that it's probably not going to be likely to be earned, and that would open up that $4 million for them to dole out to other players. Now, unfortunately for the Seahawks, and fortunately for Tyler Lockett, it didn't really move the needle too much on the cap. The Seattle Seahawks still have, according to my the over the cap numbers, is still around the 2 million mark. So they still have to do something to free up money, because they are signing some of the third and fourth layer team free agents that are out there. We'll go over who they just signed on the offensive line, but again, it's like, okay, you still got to make up a bunch of room on the cap, because you still got, in less than 2 weeks, a whole draft class that's coming in, and you're going to need at least 5 million, 6 million for them, and you still need a $2 or $3 million cushion for injuries. So Seattle still has a lot of work to do to try to figure out how they're going to get from $2 million up to somewhere around $8 to $10 million on the cap. And so we'll see how John Schneider works that. My hunch is it's going to be DK Metcalf, and getting him to extend for another 2 or 3 years, which should open up. It's going to free up money for the Seahawks to be able to pay for their rookie class, pay for any weird injuries that come up, and having to sign players off the street. And DK will get some more incentive, some more guaranteed dollars in his bank account. So, for Tyler Lockett, it bumped his cap number for 2024 to $18 million, which almost 18.8 million is what his cap number is this year, for an aging receiver, for a guy that's a second wide receiver on the team. It still kind of boggles my mind. I don't really know, from a standpoint of books, whether for your financial books, whether it's good to have that. I'm not going to say that Tyler Lockett's not worth 19 million on the cap. He is every bit of it. However, when you don't have the funding to go and make sure that you can pay for your rookies, and again, the whole cap situation is very fluid. They can do things on the books to make numbers kind of show up. That's why they have a really good capologist to do all that. I'm just saying, for the health of the financial health of the team, $18.8 million for the second receiver on your team is pretty lofty. And so that's where a lot of the rumors were going on about maybe they trade him, which Tyler himself came out and said, would you please quit with the rumors? Now, Seattle is home. This is where I want to be. I want to end my career here. And it might be next year, because currently the way it looks, Seattle did move some of that $4 million into 2025. And so his cap number now is at 30 million for next year for the second receiver on the team. That is not going to work. It's definitely not going to fly. So then, of course, Seattle could always consider the thought and entertain the thought of extending Lockett, but you would figure they would have done that this round. Why would they just move his money into incentives when they could have extended him for another couple more years and then open up some cap space that way? But I don't see them doing that. I see JSN moving up into the second position on the depth chart. We'll get into that a little bit later, but let's talk about that right now. Who is on the roster? And I really want to show you a little bit of what happened, who's currently on the team, and who are the backups and the projected starters as we get into the draft. All right, let's take a look at the roster, the way that it is set up now. In case you're wondering, who the heck plays for your Seahawks? There's been so much change. Let's start with the general manager, John Schneider. Of course, there was rumors that he was going to go back to Green Bay earlier in the offseason, that there was a possibility that they're even thinking about it, talking to him about it. Thank God that's not true. Those are not true rumors. Him and his wife seem like be pretty happy in Seattle, and he did survive the administration change that the ownership decided to do. And we'll see, now that he's got full power, full reign on this team, how he does going forward. Still one of the most underrated general managers in the NFL over the last 10 years. Coach Mike Mack is used to be the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens and the Michigan Wolverines, and over the last few years, defenses have been top 10 statistically, and so he was brought into Seattle to pretty much fix the defense, number one, and hopefully with his age being closer to 25, which is around 36, is a lot younger than Coach Carroll was, and hopefully he can bring some good connection with the young players that he can do whatever he can. Mike Mack is your head coach. Offensive coordinator is Ryan Grubb, and he brought along the offensive line coach from the Huskies. Both guys come over for the Seahawks, and they watched and molded and connected with the University of Washington Huskies, who went all the way to the national championship. Grubb was supposed to be the offensive coordinator with the Alabama Crimson Tide in the NCAAs, but unfortunately for them, he decided to stay in the Seattle area and join Coach Mike Mack in Seattle. And Coach Grubb does a really good job of his scheme, utilizes tight ends quite a bit. They have explosive plays, kind of schemed in. They have athletic offensive linemen. So the offensive line coach coming over from the Huskies is a humongous win for Mike Mack and the Seahawks. And we'll see how Ryan Grubb does as offensive coordinator and featuring some of our top 10 guys on the team. Then we got defensive coordinator Aiden Durday. He's from Great Britain. He's also the former defensive line coach for the Dallas Cowboys. And as the Cowboys the last few seasons have been in the top 5 in quarterback pressures, in sacks, some of the top quartile there. So he's coming in to manage the defense along with head coach Mike Mack, and we'll see if the two of them can really reshape the defense as we go forward. And the special teams coordinators, Jay Harbaugh, could have went to the Chargers to play with Jim Harbaugh, but decided to stay back in Seattle and is now our special teams coach. So let's take a look at who is on the team. In blue or aqua color is the free agent Seattle got, or we got via trade. The Seahawks do not have any purple or franchise tag or transition tag guys on the squad. So we look at the offense first, and of course, our star of the offense is DK Metcalf, and we know that DK needs to be featured quite a bit more. He is the number one player on offense in terms of how much number one wide receiver in terms of how much he's getting paid, and it very fluctuated pretty much last year how DK was targeted throughout the season. Sometimes he would make a really splashy play in the first quarter, and then we wouldn't hear or see him until the third or late third quarter, early fourth quarter sometimes, and then they would try to get him the ball like the last 3 or 4 minutes of the game. So he has lots of room to grow in this offense. We think that he's going to have a really great chance of getting some of those explosive plays we talked about earlier. Backing him up is Jake Bobo, another up-and-coming star for Seattle, an unsung hero out of UCLA. And I think he's got a chance one day to be the number 2 wide receiver on this team. Cody White's a 6'3", 215-pound receiver, has kind of bounced around in the league and most likely will play special teams or on the practice squad this year. Tyler Lockett, of course, we talked about him earlier. And yes, we definitely got to maximize his time while he's with Seattle. I think for all intents and purposes, this will be his last year. Derek Young is his backup, but he's mostly on special teams and practice squad. Here's an interesting acquisition for Seattle. Laviska Shenault Jr. comes to us from the Carolina Panthers, and Laviska was a top one of the top receivers taken in the draft a few years ago, and did make some flashy plays over the last few years in Carolina, but didn't pan out there. He has kind consistently been one of the top 10 receivers in broken tackles. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Debo Samuel in that regard, but he's really shifty and quick, and will definitely be penciled in as probably one of the kickoff return specialists for Seattle this year. Jackson Smith and Jigba is the slot receiver. Did pretty well last year. Won the game a few times with his game catches, his touchdown winning catches. And I think he's going to definitely push Tyler Lockett to be the second receiver on this team eventually. Seattle took a flyer on D. Eskridge, one of the top picks we got in a few years ago's draft. D. Eskridge has been injured most of his career. If he doesn't do much this year, he'll definitely be a bust as one of John Schneider's picks. He could have had a center from who ended up being with the Kansas City Chiefs. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. We ended up picking up D. Eskridge instead. And so, he needs to resurrect his career. And this is where Coach Mike Mack and Ryan Grubb hopefully will utilize his speed and get him targets and seeing if we can get him going this year. Aesop Winston Jr. is continuously is a backup practice squad special teams guy for the Seahawks. And so as we go along, you'll see these open boxes, player 4 and 5 on the roster. They're going to have to get some camp bodies via the draft and via unrestricted free agents. Guys are coming off the street to make sure that they have enough receivers. And as we go along through the roster, enough bodies to get through camp as we get to the preseason. All right, we'll head over to the offensive line. And Charles Cross is your leader on that offensive line that continuously has changed over the last 3 or 4 years. Unfortunately, we don't have a very consistent, 5-set offensive line guys that can play together, which is usually pretty much a recipe for success in the league when you have consistency on the offensive line, because there's lots of communication and dialogue that goes along throughout the game. And, gestures where they're pointing at fingers at certain defensive players that might be coming in to attack the quarterback. And you need that consistency with the offensive line. So hopefully this is the beginning of that process of solidifying the top 5 offensive linemen for the team, who, once again, they have to have athletic ability to be able to, like for the left tackle, to kind of swing out to the right side of the line to take on a linebacker or another defensive end. Similar with the right tackle, going from the right side of the line to the left side, being able to get out there ahead. And both those kind of swing types of blocks are to try to open up a lane or two for the running backs. And so Stone Forsythe is the backup there for Charles Cross. Played pretty sparingly last couple of years. Pretty good at pass protection, not so good on the run. But he's growing. Hopefully he'll continue to push and continue to stay at least as the backup in case Charles Cross goes down. Raekwon O'Neal is the third person there as a left tackle. Seattle just this week signed Laken Tomlinson from the New York Jets. He was a free agent and comes in at a minimum contract. Was a Pro Bowler at one time with the Jets, and he provides some energy, some senior ability, not really senior, meaning like old man, but veteran presence for the Seahawks in left guard. McClendon Curtis is the other guy that we signed to add backup there. Olu Watimi is another guy we got in the draft a few years ago. He did play underneath Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, and that's where Coach Mike Mack has seen him before. And he is gunning to be the starting center this year as, again, part of that youth movement. Nick Harris came to us from Cleveland and will battle Olu for the center position. And, of course, we've got open spots, again, on the offensive line, including center, where a lot of draft pundits has Seattle taking a guard, taking a center this year, kind of high, and maybe pushing to be the backup or the starting offensive lineman for the Seahawks. One of those draft picks could be reserved for the right guard position, which Anthony Bradford has done okay. He's an average right guard, has had some injury issues. And Tremaine Antrim Jr. played with the Rams the last few years, very sparingly. And so, again, there's going to be a lot of depth questions here as we go into the draft, and hoping that we can pick up some depth there or in free agency. Abraham Lucas, again, a solid right tackle, had a great freshman year for Seattle, but unfortunately last year succumbed to some injuries. They don't know how long he's going to be out in 2024. Some folks say that we should just, sit him out for this year and put in George Fant, who Seattle got back from the Jets and signed him to a 2-year deal. So it's very possible that they did bring in Fant to play right tackle for Seattle, and they brought in Max Percher, who I believe played for the Detroit Lions at one time. Let's see what his statistics look like as we get rid of this advertisement here. And yeah, we got Max Percher, who didn't do, he was with the Rams and the Lions the last few years, and 325 pounds. That's pretty good for again, getting a guy that can back up on the right tackle section of the line. So I don't think Seattle's going to be looking for too many tackles in the draft, knowing that George Fant can play tackle and on both left and right side, and they do have 3 tackles on the left side. So most likely guard is going to be a big, and center will be a big draft target this year in a few weeks. Tight end is big in this system, and let's see, for some reason my draft page is not responding, so we're going to have to probably pull that back up in a second. But Noah Fant is the big acquisition there, and signing him to a 2-year deal was important to continue having that as the guy for the tight end. He was the one that we traded for with Russell Wilson. Farrell Brown is the backup out of New England, and Brady Russell and Tyler Mabry make up the tight end room, which is a pretty solid room. It's not a great room, but it's enough of a room there that I think will be pretty good. Then we get into the quarterbacks. You got Geno Smith and Sam Howell in the quarterbacks room. I've been saying all along that I would love to see Seattle actually start Sam Howell, give him some more snaps and having a really good offensive line to protect him instead of what he had in Washington with the Commanders. I think Sam Howell is a poor man's version of Russell Wilson. But I think he's got, some accuracy issues that would make him less than Russell Wilson. But I think if he doesn't pan out, then you move Geno back in the starting position because you don't know who your long-term quarterback is. And yeah, you could draft a quarterback this year, which I think they will do, like in the 5th or 6th round. But you definitely need to get a couple more quarterbacks in there for camp bodies for the summer. And then the running back room, you got Kenny Walker, K9, Zach Charbonnet, Kenny McIntosh. Didn't see much of Kenny Mack, unfortunately, because of injury. But the kid is the one that he really wants to show the other teams that they should have drafted him. He was a 7th round pick out of Georgia. And I think the kid's very Seahawky. I think he could actually be able to push Zach Charbonnet possibly to be the backup in Seattle, at least get more as many snaps as Charbonnet. Charbonnet is the bruising running back. He actually does pretty well, with getting yards after contact. And so we hope to see more of that for him this year in his sophomore season in Seattle. All right, let's move over to the defense. You got Leonard Williams, that the big guy from the Giants that we got as a trade partner with the Giants during the season last year. and that's why we don't have a second round pick this year, unfortunately. It would have been nice to have that, but you can say Leonard Williams is your second round draft pick this year. We signed him to a tremendous contract that took up a lot of the cap space, but it was worth it because him and Jaron Reed will do a really good job in the middle of that line to keep the running backs from going right up the middle. Mike Morris is backing up Leonard Williams. Unfortunately, he had a lot of injury issues last year. Couldn't see much of him on the field. Has a high ceiling. Jonathan Hankins comes to us from Dallas, the seasoned veteran. He's a big, big guy. I want to say somewhere in the 350-pound range. And Dirty was a good, his line defensive line coach last year in Dallas, and can use Hankins and knows how to use them, how to rotate them in and out to get the most out of them. And so he will definitely be part of the rotation along with Cameron Young, who is a young guy, and he will definitely be hoping. He had a lot of snaps last year, so we're hoping that he'll take that next step up and challenge Hankins for more snaps. Matt Gotel came in and was used sparingly last year in Seattle, was mostly a practice squad guy for most of the year. Then we get into the right defensive end, and Dre Jones was one of the big flashy free agent signings we did 2 years ago. Didn't have a very good first year in Seattle. Some folks would say that they didn't use him very well. And, he can be inside on the middle of the line. He can be on the outside, like as a defensive end. And so hopefully Mike Mack and Dirty will do a good job of really bringing out a lot in Draymond Jones. Miles Adams, I like Miles Adams a lot. He's just, his motor is always up, and he's always sort of getting closer and closer to the quarterback with each snap. And so I hope to see some good stuff from him. Boye Mafe is one of the up-and-coming pass rushers in the league, not just in Seattle. So I see him taking the next step up with Dirty and Mike Mack using his skill set to the best of their ability. Darrell Taylor was a high draft pick a few years ago. Hasn't really panned out in Seattle, but they're going to take another look at him and hopefully be able to mold him better rather than just having a few flashes, that he can be more consistent in the pass rush. Hopefully they can teach him to protect the edges. So when a running back's going to Darrell Taylor's right, that he's already there by the sideline to push the running back back towards the middle of the field, where another defensive player can come and take him down for a minimal gain or tackle for loss. Darrell Taylor does have that kind of speed. We just didn't see much of it last year. Levi Bell was a preseason prince. We all thought he would be really good and possibly rotating in there for Seattle, but he never did see much of the field and was a practice squad guy for most of the year. Tyrell Dodson and Jerome Baker were the two splashy moves Seattle did in free agency this year. Tyrell Dodson came in to start for the Buffalo Bills when their middle linebacker didn't do so hot, or got injured, I should say. And Dodson did very well in his stead. But of course, now that he's back to 100%, he was expendable in Buffalo, and Seattle jumped on the chance to get him. I like the move. I think, again, under Mike McDonald's defense, he could see a significant amount of statistics here. Drake Thomas, don't know much about him. Seattle will most likely look into the draft to shore this one up. Maybe get somebody in the second round or third round, and possibly someone to really push for that backup role. Jerome Baker in Miami flashed quite a bit over his seasons as a Dolphin, and comes in as a right inside linebacker, pretty much to take Jordan Brooks' position. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out without Jordan Brooks, who was a tackling machine in Seattle, but he is now in Miami, and Baker is here in Seattle. John Radigan, we re-signed him, and he does really well in special teams along with Patrick O'Connell. It's great to have Uchenna Nwasu back. As I said earlier, he does a great job of protecting his side of the defensive line and setting the edge so that the running back doesn't get past him and pushes him back to the center of the field. Without Uchenna, the running game just went down. The running defense went down for Seattle quite a bit. So it's great to see him back, and hopefully he can stay healthy throughout the year. Derek Hall was another high draft pick for Seattle, just didn't pan out very well so far, although it was just his rookie season. He needs to really come out, and Mike Mack, I hope, and Dirty has a great chance to see his upside as a pass rush specialist, especially. Don't know much about Joshua Onujoago. I'm sure he's a practice squad guy, a camp body guy, possibly. It was great to see Seattle bring Michael Jackson back. He was an exclusive rights free agent, and they were able to work out a deal with him to stay in Seattle. Pass coverage isn't that great. I would say average at best. Yet his run tackling when he's coming up on a runner is very sure, and he's a sure tackler. So that's what I like about him the most. Trey Brown will compete with him. Another high draft pick for Seattle. Kind of have had injuries over the last few years, but great at coverage. Decent at tackling. Andrew Whitaker is probably a practice squad. But again, you have all this white space over here that Seattle needs to get more bodies, either free agency or through the draft. Another big splashy free agent signing was Rayshawn Jenkins. I call him Ray Ray from Jacksonville. The guy is an person that a lot of folks didn't really think would be great, but he wants to really prove it in Seattle. He's taking Quandre Diggs' place. Diggs is still a free agent and is able to go and sign with anybody, which we'll probably see right after the draft for Diggs. But for Seattle, Jenkins provides a lot of speed for making sure that nobody beats us over the top, and is pretty shifty and is able to move around the field quite a bit to make good plays. Kevon Wallace from the Tennessee Titans comes over to add depth, and Ty Okada is another practice squad guy and probably special teams. Julian Love came to us from the Giants. Did a great job last year. Pretty much allowed us to push out Jamal Adams, and that circus is gone. But Julian Love provides great coverage skills, and his tackling is okay. That could be improved. I think I saw a lot of broken tackles when guys would come up to, or he'd come up to them to tackle him. That could be shored up better. But Kobe Bryant also flashed his freshman year a few years ago. Unfortunately, last year was marred with injury. Don't really know where he fits in. Is he a cornerback? Is he a safety? Is he a nickelback? Still trying to figure out where Kobe's going to land eventually. Jarek Reed is a special teams standout. We see him pushing Kobe Bryant to be the backup as the free safety, and one day possibly being the starter in Seattle at free safety. The guy was lights out at Arizona State and has got tremendous speed, but was marred by injury last year as well. Reek Wallen, what the heck happened to him? Freshman year, all-pro, top 5 defensive back in the league. And then last year just sort of took some plays off and made business decisions out there not to tackle. And unfortunately, he did get benched and had to be benched. And so some of the offseason film that we're seeing about him is that he's in the weight room. He's trying to get bulkier and possibly, be able to make better decisions when it comes to tackling. But he's got tremendous speed. His coverage ability is amazing. Lance Boykin is a backup there. And again, we're probably going to look in the draft to pull out some other cornerbacks in this draft this year. Finally, we get to the nickelback, and Devin Witherspoon can play corner. He could actually be a starting cornerback in this league, but he's tremendous in the box where he's playing sort of next to a linebacker and being able to either, cover a tight end or cover a running back that's coming out of the backfield, or to actually blitz and be able to get a tackle for loss or a sack, or at least a quarterback pressure. So he was our number one defensive player, I would say, last year. I think Uchenna Unuasu has a good chance. Uchenna will most likely be the number one defensive player for Seattle this year, but Devin has a great chance to compete for that title. Artie Burns was a former first round pick for the Bears, does okay in coverage and tackling, and actually above average tackler, and will definitely be a good backup to Devin Witherspoon. And Jonathan Sutherland was another preseason Prince, and we'll see a lot of him in mini camps this year and in preseason. And then special teams, you got Michael Dixon and Jason Myers. Those two are, Dixon is probably the best punter Seattle's ever had, and Jason Myers is sort of, you don't know which version you're going to get from him as the kicker. Is he going to, miss an extra point? Is he going to go for hit a 55-yard field goal? You never know what you're going to get from him. Chris Stoll is your long snapper. Michael Dixon and Jason Myers again on your special teams. Punt return, they've got Aesop Winston slated as the possible punt returner. Some of us know Tyler Lockett sort of been doing that a couple of times, which we don't like. But hopefully Winston Jr. can stick on as a punt returner. And then earlier I was talking about some of the kickoff return and having D. Eskridge stay, and hopefully they can mold him to be a really burner in there. And then LaVisca Chenault Jr. with his breakaway ability and shedding tackles could be a really good kick returner with the new rules that the owners put in there to make the kickoff return a little bit more exciting. But it's going to be probably 50 or 60% more kickoff returns this year than we've seen last year. So that's your lineup. That's your roster. And I hope I level set with you guys. We'll do this again in a couple of weeks after the draft is over to see where these white spots will be filled in with guys that are in the draft or in free agency. Yep, so that's it. That's the level set of the Seattle Seahawks roster as it is now. Of course, later after the draft, we'll come back and level set again to see where who got drafted by your Seattle Seahawks. Like I said, nobody knows the future of this team. It's so funny how they continuously try to pick guys that they think Seattle's going to draft. This is going to be Coach Mike Mack's first draft as the head coach. You're going to have General Manager John Schneider kind of doing his thing with his scouting team and trying to figure out some diamonds in the rough and some undrafted free agents that kind of coming off the streets, and kind of Doug Baldwin sizing them to the team where we don't know who this kid was, but all of a sudden he's just doing really well and possibly starting for your Seahawks. You just never know how that's going to go. And so some key dates coming up on April 19th is the deadline for restricted free agents to sign offer sheets. So Seattle kind of did that with some of their exclusive free agents like Michael Jackson re-signed with the Seahawks. And then you got voluntary minicamp. That's April 22nd through the 24th. And I said in the last edition of The Loud and the Devoted that that's exactly what you're going to figure out. Like of all the guys, are any of them staying home? It's voluntary. They don't have to be at minicamp. They don't need to be in Renton. But as Brock Hewitt and others have always said, those leaders need to be there. They need to show up. And again, with the brand new coaching regime in Seattle, you're going to have the cohesiveness, the culture, and you can't do that if you're not there. You have to be there in person to kind of, get to know each other, get to know your players, get to know all of them. And so it's really going to be interesting to see how Seattle players will adjust and come back to Renton on April 22nd to the 24th. And then, of course, you got the draft, April 25th to the 27th in Detroit. We're going to see what Seattle does with that 16th overall pick. I think then they should be, again, if they don't have Brock Bowers sitting there or one of the top defensive tackles sitting there, then I think you trade back and try to get a second-round pick with the trade back, a 2024 second-round pick. Let's be very clear. And so, again, I think they've got 7 picks this year. If we can get to 9 or 10 by the time it's over, I think you're going to need to do that. And we showed quite a bit of all the blank spaces they have on this team. And yeah, you can fill those blank spaces with free agent, undrafted free agent guys just to kind of have more heartbeats on the team. But you really want to get talented guys, that are late draft pick guys that could fill out the roster than trying to lean on hopefully a flash in the pan guy that's an unrestricted free agent. Those kind of guys come very, very few and far between that are really, really good as an undrafted player. So again, if they can trade down a few times in this draft and move that from a 7 total picks to 10, I'd be really excited for that. And then starting May 20th through June 7th is the off-season training activities, the OTA start up again. And so those are your key dates going forward. And again, I'm really excited again to be a part of the discussion, the community, the Seahawk fan community down here in the Palm Springs desert area. And yes, there's lots of Seahawk fans down here. And we definitely we definitely bleed blue and green no matter where we live all around the world. And so this is Aaron Thomas, aka Native Seahawk, signing off for another great podcast. We'll see you again next time. And go Hawks!